Chapter 26 of Little Women. Artistic Attempts. It takes people a long time to learn the difference between talent and genius, especially ambitious young men and women. Amy was learning this distinction through much tribulation from mistaken enthusiasm for inspiration. She attempted every branch of art with youthful audacity. For a long time there was a lull in the mud pie business, and she devoted herself to the finest pen and ink drawing, in which she showed such taste and skill that her graceful handiwork proved both pleasant and profitable. But overstrained eyes caused pen and ink to be laid aside for a bold attempt at poker sketching. While this attack lasted, the family lived in constant fear of conflagration, for the odor of burning wood pervaded the house at all hours. Smoke issued from attic and shed with alarming frequency. Red-hot pokers lay about promiscuously, and Hannah never went to bed without a pail of water and the dinner bell at her door in case of fire. Raphael's face was found boldly executed on the underside of the molding board, and Bacchus on the head of beater barrel. A chanting cherub adorned the cover of the sugar bucket, and attempts to portray Romeo and Juliet supplied kindly for some time. From fire to oil was a natural transition for burned fingers, and Amy fell to painting with undiminished ardor. An artist friend fitted her out with his cast-off palettes, brushes, and colors, and she daubed away, producing pastoral and marine views such as were never seen on land or sea. Her monstrosities in the way of cattle would have taken prizes at an agricultural fair, and the perilous pitching of her vessels would have produced seasickness to the most nautical observer, if the utter disregard to all known rules of shipbuilding and rigging had not convulsed him with laughter at the first glance. Swarthy boys and dark-eyed Madonnas staring at you from one corner of the studio, suggesting Murillo. Oily brown shadows of faces with lurid streak in the wrong place meant remembrance. Buxom ladies in a dropsical infant, Rubens and Turner appeared in tempests of blue thunder, orange lighting, brown rain, and purple clouds with a tomato-colored splash in the middle, which might be the sun or a bayou, a sailor's shirt, or a kind king's robe, as the spectator pleased. Charcoal portraits came next, and the entire family hung in a row, looking as wild and crocky as it just evoked from a coal bin. Softened in the crayon sketches, they did better for the likeness, were good, and Amy's hair Joe's nose. Meg's mouth and Laurie's eyes were pronounced wonderfully fine. A return to clay and plaster followed in ghostly casts for acquaintances haunted corners of the house, or tumbled off closet shelves into people's heads. Children were enticed in as models till their incoherent accounts of her mysterious doings caused Miss Amy to be regarded in the light of a young ogress. Her efforts in this line, however, were brought to an abrupt close by an untoward accident, which quenched her ardor. Other models failing her for a time, she undertook to cast her own pretty foot, and the family were one day alarmed by an unearthly bumping and screaming, and running to the rescue, found the young enthusiast hopping wildly about the shed with her foot held fast in a pan full of plaster, which had hardened with unexpected rapidity. With much difficulty and such danger she was dug out, for Joe so overcome with laughter while she excavated that her knife went too far, cut the poor foot, and left a lasting memorial of one artistic attempt at least. After this Amy subsided, till the mania for sketching from nature set her of haunting river, field, and wood for picturesque studies and signs for ruins to copy. She caught endless colds sitting on damp grass to book a delicious bit, composed of stone, a stump, one mushroom, and a broken mullein stalk, or a heavenly mass of clouds that looked like a choice display of featherbeds when done. She sacrificed her complexion, floating on the river in the midsummer sun to study light and shade, and it got a wrinkle over her nose trying after points of sight, or whatever the squint and string performance is called. If genius is eternal patience, as Michelangelo affirms, Amy had some claim to be divine attribute, for she persevered in spite of all obstacles, failures, and discouragements, firmly believing that in time she could do something worthy to be called high art. She was learning, doing, and enjoying other things meanwhile, for she had resolved to be an attractive and accomplished woman, even if she never became a great artist. Here she succeeded better, for she was one of those happily created beings who please without effort, make friends everywhere, and take life so gracefully and easily that less fortunate souls are tempted to believe that such are born under a lucky star. Everybody liked her, for among her good gifts was tact. She had an instinctive sense of what was pleasing and proper, always said the right thing to the right person, just what suited the time and place, and was so self-possessed that her sisters used to say, if Amy went to court without any rehearsal beforehand, she'd know exactly what to do. One of her weaknesses was the desire to move in our best society without being quite sure what the best really was. Money, position, fashionable accomplishment, and elegant manners were most desirable things in her eyes, and she liked to associate with those who possessed them, often mistaking the false for the true, and admiring what was not admirable. Never forgetting that by birth she was a gentlewoman, she cultivated her aristocratic taste and feelings that when the opportunity came she might be ready to take the place from which poverty now excluded her. My lady, as her friends called her, sincerely desired to be a genuine lady, and was so at heart, but had yet to learn that money cannot buy refinement of nature, that rank does not always confer nobility, and that true breeding makes itself felt in spite of eternal drawbacks. I want to ask a favor of you, Mamma, Amy said, coming in with an important air one day. Well, little girl, what is it? Replied her mother, in whose eyes the stately young lady still remained the baby. Now, drawing class breaks up next week, and before the girls separate for the summer, I want to ask them out here for a day. They are wild to see the river, sketch the broken bridge, and copy some of the things they admire in my book. They have been very kind to me in many ways, and I am grateful, for they are all rich, and I know I am poor, yet they never made any difference. Why should they? And Mrs. March put the question with what the girls called her Maria Theresa air. You know as well as I that it does make a difference, with nearly everyone, so don't ruffle up like a deer, motherly hen, when your chickens get pecked by smarter birds. The ugly duckling turned out a swan, you know. And Amy smiled without bitterness, for she possessed a happy temper and hopeful spirit. Mrs. March laughed and smoothed down her maternal pride as she asked, Well, my swan, what is your plan? I should like to ask girls out to lunch next week, so take them for a drive to the places they want to see. A row on the river, perhaps, and make a little artistic feat for them. That looks feasible. What do you want for lunch? Cake, sandwiches, fruit, and coffee would be all that's necessary, I suppose. Oh, dear, no. We must have cold tongue and chicken, French chocolate, and ice cream besides. The girls are used to such things. I want my lunch to be proper and elegant, though I do work for my living. How many young ladies are there? Asked her mother, beginning to look sober. 12 or 14 in her class, but I dare say they won't all come. Bless me, child, you will have to charter an omnibus to carry them about. Why, mother, how can you think of such a thing? Not more than 6 or 8 will probably come, so I shall hire a beach wagon and borrow Mr. Lawrence's cherry bounce. Hannah's pronunciation cherry bonk. All this will be expensive, Amy. Not very. I've calculated the cost, and I'll pay for it myself. Don't you think, dear, that as these girls are used to such things, that the best we can do will do nothing new, that some simpler man would be pleasanter to them, the change of nothing more, and much better for us than buying or borrowing what we don't need, and attempting a style not in keeping with our circumstances? If I can't have it as I like, I don't care to have it at all. I know that I can carry it out perfectly well if you and the girls will help a little. I don't see why I can't. I'm willing to pay for it, said Amy with a decision which opposition was apt to change into obstinacy. No. Mrs. March knew that experience was an excellent teacher, and when it was possible, she left her children to learn alone the lesson which she would gladly have made easier if they had not objected to taking advice as much as they did salts and senna. Very well, Amy, if your heart is set upon it, and you see your way through without too great an outlay of money, time, and temper, I'll say no more. Talk it over with the girls, and whichever way you decide, I'll do my best to help you. Thanks, mother, you are always so kind. And away went Amy to lay her plan before her sister. Meg agreed at once and promised her aid gladly, offering anything she possessed from her little house itself to her very best salt spoons. But Joe frowned upon the whole project and would have nothing to do with it at first. Why in the world should you Why in the world should you spend your money, worry your family, and turn the house upside down for a parcel of girls who don't care a sixpence for you? I thought you had too much pride and sense to truckle to any mortal woman just because she wears French boots and rides on a coupe," said Joe, who, being called from a tragic climax of her novel, was not in the best mood for social enterprises. "I don't truckle, and I hate being patronized as much as you do," returned Amy indignantly, for the two still jangled when such questions arose. "The girls do care for me, and I for them, and there's a great deal of kindness and sense and talent among them, in spite of what you all call fashionable nonsense. You don't care to make people like you, to go into good society and cultivate your manners and tastes. I do, and I mean to make the most of every chance that comes. You can go through the world with your elbows out and your nose in the air and call it independence if you like. That's not my way." When Amy had wetted her tongue and freed her mind, she usually got the best of it, for she seldom failed to have common sense on her side, while Joe carried her love of liberty and hate of conventionalities to such an unlimited extent that she naturally found herself worsted in an argument. Amy's definition of Joe's idea of independence was such a good hit that both burst out laughing, and the discussion took a more amiable turn. Much against her will, Joe at length consented to sacrifice the day to Mrs. Grundy and help her sister through that she regarded as a nonsensical business. The invitations were sent, nearly all accepted, and the following Monday was set apart for the grand event. Hannah was out of humor because of her week's work was deranged, and prophesied that if the washing and ironing wasn't done regular, nothing would go well anywhere. This hitch in the mainspring of the domestic machinery had a bad effect upon the whole concern, but Amy's motto was nil desperandum, and having made up her mind what to do, she proceeded to do it in spite of all obstacles. She began with Hannah's cooking. Didn't turn out well. The chicken was tough, the tongue was too salty, and the chocolate wouldn't froth properly. Then the cake and ice cost more than Amy expected. So did the wagon and the various other expenses, which seemed trifling at the outset, counted up rather alarmingly afterward. Beth got a cold and took to her bed. Meg had an unusual number of callers to keep her at home, and Joe was in such a divided state of mind that her breakages, accidents, and mistakes were uncommonly numerous, serious, and trying. "If it hadn't been for Mother, I'd never had got through," as Amy declared afterward, and gratefully remembered where the best joke of the season was entirely forgotten by everybody else. It was not fair on Monday. The young ladies were to come on Tuesday, an arrangement which aggravated Joe and Hannah to the last degree. On Monday morning the weather was in that undecided state which is more exasperated than a steady pour. It drizzled a little, shone a little, blew a little, and didn't make up its mind till it was too late for anyone else to make up theirs. Amy was up at dawn, hustling people out of their beds and through their breakfasts, that the house might be got in order. The parlor struck her as looking uncommonly shabby, but without stopping so high for what she had not. She skillfully made the best of what she had, arranging chairs over the worn places in the carpet, covering the stains on the walls with homemade stationery, which gave an artistic air to the room, as did the lovely vases of flower joes scattered about. The lunch looked charming. As she surveyed it, she sincerely hoped it would taste well, and that the borrowed glass, china, and silver would get safely home again. The carriages were promised. Meg and Mother were all ready to do honors. Beth was able to help Hannah behind the scenes. Joe had engaged to be as lively and amiable as an absent mind, an aching head, and a very decided disapproval of everybody and everything would allow, and as she warily dressed, Amy cheered herself with anticipations of the happy moment when, lunch safely over, she should drive away with her friends for an afternoon of artistic delights, for the chariot bounce and the broken bridge were her strong points. Then came the hours of suspense during which she vibrated from parlor to porch, while public opinion varied like the weather cry. A smart shower at 11 had evidently quenched the enthusiasm of the young ladies who were to arrive at 12, for nobody came at 2. The exhausted family sat down at a blaze of sunshine and consumed the perishable portions of the feast, that nothing might be lost. "No doubt about the weather today. They will certainly come, so we must fly around and be ready for them," said Amy, as the sun woke her next morning. She spoke briskly, but in her secret soul she wished she had said nothing but Tuesday, for interest like her cake was getting a little stale. "I can't get any lobsters, so you will have to do without salad today," said Mr. March, coming in half an hour later with an expression of placid despair. "Use the chicken, then. The toughness won't matter in a salad," advised his wife. Hannah left in the kitchen table a minute, and the kittens got at it. "I'm very sorry, Amy," added Beth, who was still a patroness of cats. "Then I must have a lobster, for tongue alone won't do," said Amy decidedly. "Shall I rush into town and demand one?" asked Joe with the magnanimity of a martyr. "You'd come bringing it home under your arm without any paper, just to try me." "I'll go myself," answered Amy, whose temper was beginning to fail. Shrouded in a thick veil and armed with a genteel traveling basket, she departed, feeling the cool drive would soothe her rough spirit and fit for her the labors of the day. After some delay, the object of her desire was procured. Likewise a bottle of dressing to prevent further loss of time at home, and off she drove again, well pleased with her own forethought. As the omnibus contained only one other passenger, a sleepy old lady, Amy pocketed her veil and beguiled the tedium of the way by trying to find out where all her money had gone to. So busy was she her card full of refractory figures that she did not observe a newcomer, who entered without stopping the vehicle, till a masculine voice said, "Good morning, Miss March," and looking up she beheld one of Laurie's most elegant college friends, fervently hoping that he would get out before she did. Amy utterly ignored the basket at her feet and congratulated herself that she had on her new travailing dress. He returned the young man's greeting with her usual suavity and spirit. They got an excellency, for Amy's chief care was soon set at rest by learning that the gentleman would leave first, and she was chatting away in a peculiarly lofty strain when the old lady got out. In stumbling to the door, she upset the basket, and oh horror! The lobster, in all its vulgar size and brilliancy, was revealed to the high-born eyes of a tutor. "By Jove, she's forgotten her dinner!" cried the unconscious youth, poking the scarlet monster into place with his cane, and preparing to hand out the basket after the old lady. "Please don't, it's mine," murmured Amy with a face nearly as red as her fish. "Oh, really, I beg pardon. It's an uncommonly fine one, isn't it?" said Tutor with a great presence of mind and an air of sober interest that did credit to his breeding. Amy recovered herself within a breath and set her basket boldly on the seat and said, laughing, "Don't you wish you were to have some of the salads he's going to make, and to see the charming young ladies who are to eat it?" Now that week's act for the ruling foibles of the masculine mind was touched, the lobster was instantly surrounded by a halo of pleading reminiscence and curiosity about the charming young ladies that diverted his mind from the comical mishap. "I suppose we'll laugh and joke over it with Laurie, but I shan't see them. That's a comfort," thought Amy's tutor, bowed and departed. She did not mention this meeting at home, though. She discovered that, thanks to the upset, her new dress was much damaged by the rivulets of dressing that meandered down the skirt. But it went through with the preparation, which now seemed more irksome than before, and at 12 o'clock was all ready again. Feeling that the neighbors were interested in her movements, she wished to efface the memory of yesterday's failure by a grand success today. So she ordered the cherry bounce and drove away in state to meet the escort her guests to the banquet. "There's the humble, they're coming. I'll go into the porch and meet them. It looks hospitable, and I want the poor child to have a good time after all the trouble," said Mrs. March, suiting the action to the word. But after one glance, she retired with an indescribable expression, for looking quite lost in the big carriage, said Amy and one young lady, "Run, Beth, and help Anna clear half the things off the table. It will be too absurd to put a luncheon for 12 before a single lady." "How now?" cried Joe, hurrying away to the lower regions, too excited to stop even for a laugh. "Don't be shy, come on." It came Amy, quite calm and delightfully cordial to the one guest who had kept her promise. "Well, a little too forward. The rest of the family, being of dramatic turn, played their parts equally well, and Miss Elliot found them a most hilarious set, for it was impossible to control entirely the merriment which possessed them. The remodeled lunch being gaily partaken of the studio and garden visitors, and her heart discussed with enthusiasm. Amy ordered a buggy, alas for the elegant cherry bounce, and drove her friend quietly about the neighborhood till sunset when the party went out. Nay. You can come over here and spread them, ladies. As she came walking in, looking very tired, but as composed as ever, she observed that every vestige of the unfortunate feat had disappeared except a suspicious pucker about the corner of Joe's mouth. "Ha! You've had a lovely afternoon for your drive, dear," said her mother as respectfully as if the whole 12 had come. "Miss Elliot is a very sweet girl and seemed to enjoy herself, I thought," observed Beth with unusual warmth. "Could you spare me some of your cake? I really need some. I have so much company and I can't make such delicious stuff as yours," asked Meg soberly. "Get a little dirty. Take it all. I'm the only one here who likes sweet things and will mold before I can dispose of it," answered Amy, thinking with a sigh of the generous store she had laid in for such an end as this. "How now? Sweet lady, it's a pity Laurie isn't here to help us," began Joe as they sat down to ice cream and salad for the second time in 2 days. A warning look from her mother checked any further remarks, and the whole family ate in heroic silence, till Mr. March mildly observed, "Salad was one of the favorite dishes of the ancients," and Evelyn, here a general explosion of laughter cut short the history of salads, to the great surprise of the learned gentleman. "Bundle everything into a basket and send it into the hummus. Germans like messes. I'm sick of the sight of this, and there's no reason you should all die of surf fight because I've been a fool," cried Amy, wiping her eyes. "I thought I should have died when I saw you two girls riding about in what you call it, like two little colonels in a very big nutshell, and mother waiting in state to receive the throng," sighed Joe, quite spent with laughter. "I'm very sorry you were disappointed, dear, but we all did our best to satisfy you," said Mrs. March in a tone full of motherly regret. "I am satisfied. I've done what I undertook, and it's not my fault that it failed. I comfort myself with that," said Amy with a little quiver in her voice. "I thank you all very much for helping me, and I'll thank you still more if you won't allude to it for a month at least." No one did for several months, but the word feet always produced a general smile, and Laura's birthday gift to Amy was a tiny coral lobster in the shape of a charm for a watch guard. A peek. Don't dig too deep now. I'm definitely not good at dirty talking. I like how Little Caesar stole my exact painting, literally like the face and everything. Go ahead and save that and tuck that away. I will be keeping tabs on every one of them. Okay, so moving on, Little Women. Chapter 27, Literary Lessons. The hard way here. Fortune suddenly smiled upon Joe and dropped a good luck penny in her path. Not a golden penny exactly, but I doubt if $500,000 would have given more real happiness than did the little sum that came to her in this wise. Every few weeks she would shut herself up in her room, put on her scribbling suit, and fall into a vortex, as she expressed it, writing away at her novel with all her heart and soul, for till that was finished she could find no peace. Her scribbling suit consisted of a black woolen pinafore on which she would wipe her pen at will, and a cap of the same material adorned with a cheerful red bow, into which she bundled her hair when the decks were cleared for action. This cap was a beacon to the inquiring eyes of her family, who during these periods kept their distance, merely popping in their heads semi-occasionally to ask with interest, "Does genius burn, Joe?" They did not always venture even to ask this question, but took on observation of the cap and judged accordingly. If this expressive article of dress was drawn low upon the forehead, it was a sign that hard work was going on. In exciting moments it was pushed rakishly askew, and when despair seized the author it was plucked wholly off, and cast upon the floor. At such times the intruder silently withdrew, and not until the red bow was seen gaily erect upon the gifted brow did anyone dare address Joe. She did not think herself a genius by any means. By when the writing fit came on, she gave herself up to it with entire abandon and led a blissful life, unconscious of want, care, or bad weather, while she sat safe and unhappy in an imaginary world full of friends almost as real and dear to her as any in the flesh. Sleep forsook her eyes. Meals stood untasted. Day and night were all too short to enjoy the happiness which blessed her only at such times, and made these hours worth living, even if they bore no other fruit. The divine afflatus usually lasts a week or two, and then she emerged from her vortex, hungry, sleepy, cross, or despondent. She was just recovering from one of those attacks when she was prevailed upon an escort Miss Crocker to a lecture, and in return for her virtue was rewarded with a new idea. It was a people's chorus, the lecture on the pyramids, and Joe rather wondered at the choice of such a subject for such an audience, but took it for granted that some great social evil would be remedied, or some great want supplied by unfolding glories of pharaohs to an audience whose thoughts were busy with the price of coal and flour, and whose lives were spent in trying to solve harder riddles than that of the Sphinx. They were early, and while Miss Crocker sat at the heel of her stocking, Joe amused herself by examining the faces of people who occupied the seat with them. On her left were two matrons, with masks of foreheads and bonnets to match, discussing women's rights and the making of tatting. Beyond sat a pair of humble lovers, artlessly holding each other by the hand, a somber spinster eating peppermints out of paper bags, and an old gentleman making his preparatory nap behind a yellow bandana. On her right, her only neighbor was a studious-looking lad absorbing a newspaper. It was a pictorial sheet, and Joe examined the work of artists nearest her, idly wondering what fortunate concatenation of circumstances needed the melodramatic illustration of an Indian in full war costume, tumbling over a precipice with a wolf at his throat, while two infuriated young gentlemen with unnaturally small feet and big eyes were stabbing each other close by, and a disheveled female was flying away in the background with her mouth wide open. Pausing to turn a page, the lad saw her looking, with boyish good nature offered half his paper, saying bluntly, "Want to read it? That's a first-rate story." Joe accepted it with a smile, for she had never outgrown her liking for lads, and soon found herself involved in the usual labyrinth of love, mystery, and murder. If the story belonged to that class of light literature in which the passions have a holiday, and when the author's invention fails, a grand catastrophe clears the stage of one half the dramatis persona, leaving the other half to exult over their downfall. "Prime, isn't it?" asked the boy as her eye went down to the last paragraph of her portion. "I thank you, and I could do as well if we tried," returned Joe, amused at his admiration of the trash. "I should think I was pretty luck chap if I could. She makes a good living out of such stories, they say," and he pointed to the same of Mrs. Slang, Northbury, under the title of the tale. "Do you know her?" asked Joe with sudden interest. "No, but I read all her pieces, and I know a fellow who works in the office where the paper is printed." "Do you say she makes a good living out of stories like this?" And Joe looked more respectfully at the agitated group and thickly sprinkled exclamation points that adorned the page. "My knee, guess she does. She knows just what folks like and gets paid well for writing it." A prelude later, the lecture began, but Joe heard very little of it, for while Professor Sands was prosing away about Belzoni, Schups, Scarabee, and hieroglyphics, she was covertly taking down the address of the paper and boldly resolving to try for the $100 prize offered in its column for a sensational story. By the time the lecture ended with the audience awoke, she had built up a splendid fortune for herself, not the first founded on paper, and was already deep in the concoction of her story, being unable to decide whether the duel should come before the elopement or after the murder. She said nothing of her plan at home, but fell to work next day, much to the disquiet of her mother, who always looked a little anxious when genius took to burning. Joe had never tried this style before, contenting herself with a very mild romances for the spread eagle. Her experience in miscellaneous reading were of service now, for they gave her some idea of dramatic effect and supplied plot, language, and costumes. Her story was as full of desperation and despair as her limited acquaintance with those uncomfortable emotions enabled her to make it, and having located it in Lisbon, she wound up with an earthquake as a striking and appropriate denouement. The manuscript was privately dispatched, accompanied by a note modestly saying that if she Tale didn't get the prize, which the writer hardly direct expects she would be very glad to receive any sum it might be considered worth. 6 weeks is a long time to wait, and a still longer time for a girl to keep a secret, but Jo did both, and was just beginning to give all the hope of ever seeing her manuscript again, when a letter arrived which almost took her breath away, for an opening it check for $100 fell into her lap. For a minute she stared at it as if it had been a snake. Then she read her letter and began to cry. If the amiable gentleman who wrote that kindly note could have known what intense happiness he was giving a fellow creature, I think he would devote the leisure hours, if he has any, to that amusement. For Jo values the letter more than the money, because it was encouraging. But after years of effort, it was so pleasant to find that she had learned to do something that, though it was only to write a sensation story. Ha! That's funny. A prouder young woman was seldom seen than she, when having composed herself, she electrified the family by appearing before them with a letter in one hand, the check in the other, announcing that she won the prize. Of course, it was a great jubilee, and when the story came, everyone read and praised it. So after her father had told her that the language was good, the romance fresh and hearty, and the tragedy quite thrilling, he shook his head and said in his unworldly way, "You can do better than this, Jo. Aim at the highest and newest mind to money." "I think the money is the best part of it. What will you do with such a fortune?" asked Amy, regarding the magic slip of paper with a reverential eye. "Send Beth and Mother to the seaside for a month or two," answered Jo promptly. "Oh, how splendid! No, I can't do it, dear. It would be so selfish," cried Beth, who had clapped her thin hands and taken a long breath as if pining for fresh ocean breeze, and stopped herself with a motion away that check with her sister waved before her. "Ah, but you shall go. I've set my heart on it. That's what I tried for, and that's what I succeeded. I never got him when I think of myself alone, so it will help me to work for you, don't you see? Besides, Marmee needs a change, and she won't leave you, so you must go. Won't it be fun to see you come home plump and rosy again? Hurrah for Dr. Jo, who always cures her patients." To the seaside they went after much discussion, and though Beth didn't come home as plump and rosy as could be desired, she was much better, while Mrs. March declared she felt 10 years younger. So Jo was satisfied with the investment of her prize money and fell to work with a cheery spirit, bent on earning more of those delightful checks. She did earn several that year and began to feel herself power in the house, for by the magic of a pen her rubbish turned into comforts for them all. The Duke's daughter paid the butcher's bill. A phantom hand put down a new carpet, and the curse of the Coventries proved the blessings of the Marches in the way of groceries and gowns. Wealth is certainly a most desirable thing, but poverty has its sunny side, and one of the sweet uses of adversity is a genuine satisfaction when it comes from hearty work of head or hand, and to the inspiration of necessity. We owe half the wise, beautiful, useful blessings of the world. Jo enjoyed a taste of this satisfaction, and ceased to envy richer girls, taking great comfort in the knowledge that she could supply her own wants and need ask no one for a penny. Little notice was taken of her stories, but they found a market, and encouraged by this fact, she resolved to make a bold stroke for fame and fortune. Having copied her novel for the 4th time, read it to all her confidential friends, and submitted it with her fear and trembling to 3 publishers, she at last disposed of it, on condition that she would cut it down 1/3, and omit all the parts which she particularly admired. Now I must either bundle it back to my tin kitchen to mold, pay it for printing it myself, or chop it up to suit purchasers and get what I can for it. Fame is a very good thing to have in the house, but cash is more convenient. So I wish to take this into the meeting on this important subject, and said Jo, calling a family council. Don't spoil your book, my girl, for there's more in it than you know, and the idea is well worked out. Let it wait and ripen, was her father's advice, and he practiced what he preached, having waited patiently 30 years for the fruit of his own to ripen, and being in no haste to gather it even now when it was sweet and mellow. It seems to me that Jo will profit more by taking the trial than by waiting, said Mrs. March. Criticism is the best test of such work, for it will show her both unsuspected merits and faults, and help her to do much better next time. We are too partial But the praise and blame of outsiders will prove useful, even if she gets but little money. Yes, said Joe, knitting her brows. That's just it. I've been fussing over the thing so long, I really don't know whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It'll be a great help to have cool, impartial persons take a look at it and tell me what they think of it. I wouldn't leave a word out of it. You'll spoil it if you do, for the interest of the story is more in minds than the actions of people, and it will be all a muddle if you don't explain as you go on, said Meg, who firmly believed that this book was the most remarkable novel ever written. But Mr. Allen says, leave out the explanations, make it a brief and dramatic, and let the characters tell the stories. Interrupted Joe, turning to the publisher's note. Do as he tells you. He knows what will sell, and we don't. Make a good popular book and get as much money as you can. By and by, when you've got a name you can afford to digress, you have philosophical and metaphysical people to your novels, said Amy, who took a strictly practical view of the subject. Well, said Joe, laughing, if my people are philosophical and metaphysical, it isn't my fault, for I know nothing about such things, except what I hear Father say sometimes. If I've got some of his wise ideals jumbled up with my romance, so much the better for me. Now, Beth, what do you say? I should do like to see it printed soon, was all Beth said, and smiling saying it. But there was an unconscious emphasis on the last word, and a wistful look in the eyes that never lost their childlike candor, which chilled Joe's heart for a minute with a foreboding fear and decided her to make her little venture soon. So, with Spartan firmness, the younger authoress laid her firstborn on her table and chopped it up as ruthlessly as any ogre. In the hope of pleasing everyone, she took everyone's advice, and like the old man and his donkey in the fable suited nobody. Her father liked the metaphysical streak, which had unconsciously got into it, so that was allowed to remain, though she had her doubts about it. Her mother, though, that thought that was a trifle too much description, out therefore it came, and with as many necessary links in the story. Meg admired the tragedy, so Joe piled up the agony to suit her, while Amy objected to the fun, and with the best intentions in life, Joe quenched the sprightly scenes which relieved the somber character of the story. Then, to complicate the ruin, she cut it down 1/3 and confidingly sent the poor little romance like a picked robin out into the big, busy world to try its fate. Well, it was printed, and she got $300 for it, likewise plenty of praise and blame, both so much greater than she expected that she was thrown into a state of bewilderment from which it took her some time to recover. You said, Mother, that criticism would help me. But how can it, when it's so contradictory that I don't know whether I've written a promising book or broken all the 10 Commandments? Cried poor Joe, turning over a heap of notices, the perusal of which filled her with pride and joy one minute, wrath and dismay the next. This man says an exquisite book full of truth, beauty, and earnestness, all is sweet, pure, and healthy, continued the perplexed authoress. The next, the theory of the book is bad, full of morbid fancies, spiritualistic ideas, and unnatural characters. Now, as I had no theory of any kind, don't believe in spiritualism, and copied my characters from life, I don't see how this critic can be right. Another says it's one of the best American novels which has appeared for years. I know better than that. And the next asserts that though it is original and written with great force and feeling, it is a dangerous book. 'Tisn't. Some make fun of it, some overpraise, and nearly all insist that I had deep theory to expound, when I only wrote it for the pleasure and the money. I wish I'd printed the whole, or not at all, for I do hate to be so misjudged. Her family and friends administered comfort and commendation liberally, yet it was a hard time for sensitive, high-spirited Joe, who meant so well and had apparently done so ill. But it did her good, for those whose opinion had real value gave her the criticism which is an author's best education. And when the first soreness was over, she could laugh at her poor little book, yet believe in it still, and feel herself the wiser and sharper for the buffeting she had ever received. Not being a genius like Keats, it won't kill me, she said stoutly, and I've got that joke on my side, after all, for the parts that were taken straight out of real life are denounced as impossible and absurd, and the scenes that I made up out of my own silly head are pronounced charmingly natural, tender, and true. So I'll comfort myself with that, and when I'm ready I'll go again and take another.